Okay, welcome back to the next part of the video. In the last video, we got our plan set up for taking the XR2 back to Earth and arriving in plane with the ISS, and our plan is to get back to Earth and use the atmosphere as a brake so that we don't have to use any fuel to do that large braking burn. Now we're all set up and ready to go, so let's get everything going. Going to bring up orbit on this side, make sure projection is ship, make sure distance, actually I think we want APR, PER in this case because we're going for that target of 1758. Actually I guess it doesn't matter, 20 kilometers will be fine. Change the frame to equatorial, though probably doesn't matter. And we're going to have a heading of 58.49. We can optionally bring up a line plane at this point, and we can press ELS and put in the inclination 48.4 and the longitude of the ascending node 2231.5. And this will give us a reference as we take off and get into orbit around the moon. This can help us stay dialed in to the correct plane. Let's turn APU on, surface controls off, rotation, extend the radiator, hover doors, retro. Turn off external cooling. And just one last check of what we're doing here. We're lifting up off the pad, rotating to 58.5, and heading out. Let's do it.
Wheels up.
A little bit of hover.
Gear up.
Raise the landing gear.
Gear up and locked. Translation. Rotation.
And it's 58.5. Should be right about there. Full power on the main engines, lock them. Pitch up just a couple degrees, turn off the hover, close the hover doors. And now we just keep an eye on our relative inclination while we're heading up into a lunar orbit and pitch up a couple more degrees. Because we notice here our vertical speed has gone negative, so let's make sure that that's corrected. Okay, now it's going back positive. And our relative inclination is still coming down slowly. I'm not really going to use this. Bring up orbit MFD instead. I'm just going to watch the relative inclination over here. And if I need to, I can kind of do an adjustment here with the white line to make sure we're all squared away. And now we're going to go down basically close to level on the horizon. Pitch up just enough to keep the vertical speed from going negative. And now we're just waiting for our apoapsis. Putting in a little bit of yaw, bring the relative inclination down more quickly. And a little bit of an overshoot there on the altitude. So one small burst of reverse and we're all set there. If we look at our distance, APR is 1.758, which is what we want. So we can close retro doors. turn off the APU. Time to apoapsis is 1,700 seconds. And just so that I can have larger MFDs to look at in the video playback, I'm going to bring this view up unless I need to access one of the switches.
Translation.
So we're going to go prograde here basically, but in the interest of saving a little bit of fuel, I'm just going to put in one tap of rotation and then use 10x to speed up the rotation, and that will save me the trouble of using the prograde autopilot, which uses more fuel than is necessary. And with the eject orientation, I'm going to just do a bit of a correction here, just to see how many degrees out we are.
Translation.
Get the vessel level.
Translation.
And with just a little bit of translation, I should be able to bring that relative inclination down to a point where it's nice and low. Had I been paying better attention when I was taking off and getting into orbit, I could have yawed sooner, and I wouldn't have this much relative inclination, but it's going to be okay. And then as this white line kind of gets off from there, I'm just going to do an adjustment to get it closer. Like that, because it's more accurate. I'm just continuing to bring down that relative inclination. And again, we're off now. And this gets increasingly sensitive as this number gets lower. So we have to continually go to ever more fine settings.
Rotation.
Go ahead and get rotated, prograde, and wings level.
Translation.
And a little bit more translation, and we'll have that all the way down to like that. Okay, now we're here, and we got to go all the way around the moon before we get over to this point. There are two things I want to do before that. Number one, I want to come over to apoapsis and circularize the orbit. As I'm getting close, instead of using prograde, again, I'm going to rotate and then go 10x. And back to real time. And kill rotate. I'm going to put in one blast of control 1 to kind of keep myself here more toward prograde as I come around the curvature of the moon. And we still got 100 seconds until we're at apoapsis. And I kind of feel like it's more realistic, actually, to let the computer do some of the work for you. So we're going to circularize. And there we have it. That's obviously something very simple to do by hand, but you know, in a real mission, I think it would be more common to have the pilot or the commander or whomever to program in what is going to happen at a specific time, and then, you know, have a key or a function or something to press, then have the computer carry out that command. I just don't imagine that in real space flight there are too many pilots sitting there, you know, looking at a clock or looking at a specific thing with their foot on the gas pedal ready to go. I just don't think it happens that way. Anyway, now that we are done with that part, we're circular, I'm going to see about maybe setting up a maneuver here for this to override my escape plan. And let me do it this way. So on this side, I'll turn maneuver mode on. And what I want is a prograde value that is equal to the delta V that I see over here. So that's going to be 859.3. And now I'm going to go all the way down to hyper, and I'm going to swing this around so that it lays over top of that, because this is asking me when, or this is saying when I'm going to do the burn, and I don't want to do it now. I want to do it over here at the eject point. So I'm going to lay that straight over top like that. I think it's actually closer there, yeah. And you won't be able to get it laid straight over top perfectly, but that's okay because we'll make some very subtle adjustments to the maneuver here in a moment. Now, once we have that set up, if we come forward on this side, then we can see that, you know, the plan is still favoring, Transx is still favoring the escape plan. So what we're going to do is go through our, I should say it's favoring the eject plan. We need to go through the eject plan and cancel out all the velocity that we put in through the 3 different variables. So we're going to cancel outward, we're going to cancel prograde, and we're going to cancel plane change. And now our eject plan is now favoring the maneuver that we have set up. Now on this side, because I don't like that view, I'm going to go to graph projection and change it to focus. That looks better to me. And I'm going to look at so anyway, by doing it that way, now I've got the view target, and I can come over here and line the green X up when it's time. So I'm going to fast forward time here a little bit. I want to get closer to the time to begin the burn. But as I get closer, I also want to make sure that this maneuver, I also want to make sure I'm happy with this maneuver. So maybe when I'm just 600 seconds out, which is 10 minutes, okay, we're getting pretty close. So now if I come over here and look at the eject plan on this side, which I guess you don't get the encounter view, that's okay. But I can see that Transx has me coming back here to Earth, and it thinks that I'm going to be coming in at this point, which is well above the orbital altitude of the ISS. But I also know that Transx lies, and that by the time I get back to Earth, most likely this is going to be much lower, and it's probably even going to be lower than what I really want. So I'm actually going to come back over to this side to view maneuver and play with these variables a little bit more. That's bringing the altitude down some. So you can see as I'm adding in minus, it's kind of pushing the altitude out. And I'm going to bring it in just enough so I can see it. Right there. But now again, I've got the ISS is way over here. It's not really where I want it to be when I get there. So maybe we'll add in just a touch of outward. And back to prograde. And that's a little too much outward now. Okay, so I'm saying that I'm going to get back to Earth, and I'm going to be, you know, this to me looks like it's probably 1,000 kilometers, maybe 1,500, but I believe that when I get back to Earth that the error will be enough that it will actually have me much closer to the planet, and that's what I want. Okay. Now VW over to target. And we're going to go to the time to do the burn. And let's get rotated.
Translation.
Okay, gonna do the burn in 45 seconds. And by doing it this way, by setting up the maneuver, it gives me the green X and the target view to follow, so I don't have to worry about trying to track the semi-major difference in the relative inclination. I just have to focus on keeping the green X in the middle. So in this way, I do think that setting these maneuvers up is worth the hassle. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it. But having this view target is nice. Burning in 3, 2, 1, burning. And we'll go ahead and 10x through the burn.
Translation. Translation. Rotation. Translation.
Okay, maneuver mode is off, and we can see on this side that our hypothetical, well, actually it's not our hypothetical, it's our real orbit at this point. Our real projected orbit is right where we said we wanted it to be. And if we come back to view setup and go to scale to view, we can change, to all or craft, and we can kind of see what it looks like from this vantage point. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and save again at this point and make that the end of this video. We'll just call that the liftoff and completing the actual eject burn part of the mission. If you have any questions about what I did in this part, go ahead and leave your questions down below. And if you like the video, of course, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, welcome back to the next part of the video. In the last video, we got our plan set up for taking the XR2 back to Earth and arriving in plane with the ISS, and our plan is to get back to Earth and use the atmosphere as a brake so that we don't have to use any fuel to do that large braking burn. Now we're all set up and ready to go. 0.49. We can optionally bring up a line plane at this point, and we can press ELS and put in the inclination 48.4 and the longitude of the ascending node 2231.5, and this will give us a reference as we take off and get into orbit around the moon. This can help us stay dialed in to the year. We're lifting up off the pad, rotating to 58.5 and heading out. Let's do it.
Wheels up.
A little bit of hover.
Gear up.
Raise the landing gear.
Gear up and locked. Translation. Rotation.
The correct plane. Let's turn APU on. Service controls off. Rotation. Extend the radiator. Hover doors, retro.
Using onboard O2.
Turn off external cooling. And just one last check of what we're doing. So let's get everything going. Going to bring up orbit on this side. Make sure projection is ship. Make sure distance. Actually, I think we want APR, PER in this case, because we're going for that target of 1758. Actually, I guess it doesn't matter. 20 kilometers will be fine. Change the frame to equatorial, though probably doesn't matter. And we're going to have a heading of 58